A new UGC rule promises to end caste discrimination on campus, but critics say it could create fear instead. What's really changing? On January 15, 2026, the UGC notified the Promotion of Equity in Higher Education Institutions Regulation 2026. These rules replace the older anti-discrimination regulations from 2012. According to the UGC, the aim is simple: to make campuses safer, fairer, and more inclusive. The timing is important. Official data shows that complaints related to caste-based discrimination in educational institutions have more than doubled in recent years. From 173 cases in 2017-18, the number rose to 378 in 2023-24, an increase of over 118%. Courts have also been increasingly questioning the institutions about student welfare and caste bias. Under the new regulations, vice chancellors and principals are directly responsible for preventing discrimination and responding to complaints. This is a big shift. Earlier, many of these rules were advisory, now they are legally binding. Every college and university must set up an equal opportunity center supported by an equity committee. These committees must include members from scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, OBC, women, persons with disabilities, etc. They are required to meet regularly and publish detailed reports on campus demographics, dropouts, and complaints. The rules also introduced 24-hour equity helplines, so-called equity squads to monitor vulnerable campus spaces like hostels, and equity ambassadors across departments. Institutions that fail to comply can face serious penalties, including a loss of UGC funding, cancelling of degree programs, or even removal from the list of recognized universities. On paper, this looks like a strong action, but this is where the controversy begins. Critics argue while these rules expand protections, they do not provide enough safeguards for those who are accused. The definition of discrimination is very broad. It includes explicit acts, implicit bias, indirect actions, and even structural discrimination. But the questions do not clearly explain how to measure discrimination, what counts as a proof, and how intent should be judged. Experts warn that this gives huge discretionary power to internal committees, which may vary widely in training, independence, and competence. Another concern is speed. Committees must meet within 24 hours of receiving the complaint and complete the inquiries in 15 working days, and institutions must act within 7 days. While fast action is important for victims, critics say complex cases, especially involving academic judgment, cannot always be examined fairly in such short timelines. There's also anxiety about the mandatory link to the police. If a complaint appears to involve prima facie offense, it must be forwarded to law enforcement. Academics fear that this could lead to premature criminalization, discourage open discussion in classrooms, and push administrators to overly defensive actions. Perhaps the strongest backlash is coming from upper caste students and groups who argue that the regulation is not caste neutral. While the law recognizes that both men and women can face discrimination, it explicitly prioritizes protections for SCs, STs, OBCs, EWS, and persons with disabilities. General category students, they argue, are not recognized as possible victims of caste discrimination. Protesters say that this creates a one-sided framework and raises fear of misuse, drawing comparisons to the debates around SC/ST Act and the Dowry Act. They point out that the regulations do not clearly address false or malicious complaints, nor do they provide compensation or safeguards for those cleared of allegations. This concern has reached the parliament as well. Shiv Sena MP Priyanka Chaturvedi questioned the lack of clarity and equal protection. She asked a simple but important question: how do we define discrimination? Through words, actions, or perceptions? And what happens when a complaint is false? She warned that without balance and precision, the rules could increase tension on campuses instead of reducing it. Supporters of the regulation, however, push back strongly. They argue that the caste discrimination is real in higher education, it's well documented and sometimes systematic. They say that reservation exists in the constitution because equality on paper has not translated into equality in practice. They say that the focus on marginalized groups is not discrimination, but corrective justice, something that courts have upheld consistently. So where does this leave us? The UGC says that these regulations are about long-term structural reform and institutional accountability. Critics say that the intent might be right, but the execution risks are creating fear, surveillance, and mistrust. The truth is that both things can be true at once. Campuses need to be safe for Dalits, Adivasis, OBCs, minorities, disabled, and the first-generation students. At the same time, rules must be clear, fair, and balanced, with a strong due process for everyone. Whether these regulations lead to real equity or deeper conflict will depend on how they are implemented, with transparency, independent oversight, and genuine care for student mental health and academic freedom. Because equity is not just about rules, it's about trust.